Hey everybody, and welcome to another edition of This Week in Cleantech, your favorite 15-minute roundup of some of the biggest stories in climate and clean energy each week. If you're keeping score at home, which I hope you are, have a calendar of some capacity, it's Friday, February 20th, 2026. We got a first-time guest on the show today. Arcelia Martin from Inside Climate News is waiting in our digital lobby. I'm Factor This content director Paul Gerke, joined as always by Cleantech commentator Mike Casey of Tigercomm. I say as always, except for the last show where I was left in the lurch. Mike, we missed you.
Thanks, buddy. Well, I think it's all a plot on the part of Brian Mendez. He wants to take my place. This has been his plot all along.
A power play.
It was, and I have my suspicions about your part in this court intrigue, but I'm going to let it go for now and be the bigger one. So.
I just greased the wheels that move this machine along, brother. I am I am like water, as Bruce Lee would say. Hey, we do appreciate hearing from the viewers, the listeners, however you digest this here podcast. If you want to get your voice on the show, it's very easy to do that. We've set up an email address specifically for your thoughts. It's TWIC at Tigercomm with 2Ms.US. Is anyone checking that email, Mike? Who's responsible for that? Was that me?
Yes, I think
we are checking it. Okay,
yes,
that's great.
Claire Queeran checks it. Don't worry.
Shout out. There you go, Claire. Way to go.
We screen out the millions of your fans who want your home address.
Yeah, fans. Yeah, that's what you could call them. Phishing attempts might be another, but sure. Mike, we got 5 stories to get to this week. Let's get us started. Story number 1. Where are we going?
Yeah, David Gillis of the New York Times, why living in China is like living in the future, Paul Gerke.
We talk about China positively on this show quite a bit because we focus on clean tech, and China is by far and away the clear leader in deploying and scaling clean technologies. Over the last year, David and his colleagues over at the Times have been doing a good job of chronicling this, where China's clean products are just coming in, frankly, less expensive, they're more convenient than fossil fuel technologies on the market, and clean tech is driving China's economic growth last year. They account for some $2.1 trillion in economic activity associated with clean tech. On the other hand, the U.S. is falling behind. The current administration, as we all know, is finding all sorts of ways to penalize renewables, whether it's telling wind products to stop working or culling tax incentives, and finding ways to promote fossil fuels. Just this week, the White House ordered the Pentagon to buy more electricity generated from our favorite clean fuel source, coal. Clean coal, baby.
Yeah.
And that's on top of the $30 billion that's already been canceled in loans for clean energy projects and counting. Mike, your thoughts on this?
So, Chinese EV exports hit a record $70 billion last year with sales in 115 countries and territories. I was in one of those countries last week.
Not the U.S., though. Didn't need us to get to that number.
I was in one of those countries last week, and I rode in my first BYD in an Uber ride. It is a nice...
Is it really?
Oh my gosh, it's a very nice car. In the first half of last year, China's solar cell exports rose sharply, even while exports of finished solar panels level off due to oversupply. So Keith Bradshaw, one of David Gillis' colleagues at the Times, he reports out of Beijing, and he said, quote, "We're shifting away from an oil-powered world to a much less expensive solar power world." He also mentioned China's near monopoly on solar panels, and I'm going to add this. I had a reason to look this up. Though we invented not just solar, but modern wind power equipment, China is now the clear leader in both wind equipment manufacturing and wind energy deployment. So just expanding its dominance.
Yeah.
And right now, it looks like China is building the cheapest energy future on Earth. The rest of us is going to just buy it because of the decisions made by the current clown car show that's running things. Meanwhile, American utility bills went up 6.7% alone in December, thanks to the cancellation of 1,891 proposed solar and wind farms in significant measure. Paul, story number 2.
Second story this week is from Kirsten Korosek from TechCrunch, titled "Ford Turns to F1 and Bounties to Build a $30,000 Electric Truck." Tell me more, Mike.
In a story that is sure to warm Paul Gerke's heart,
it's warming up
because he was ruining the end of the Lightning.
The Lightning didn't make sense to me, to be honest.
Yep. And Ford said Tuesday it plans to launch an electric truck next year starting at $30,000. It says it can compete with Chinese automakers and still make a profit using 3D printed Lego-like parts. Formula One thinking in a bounty program. Ford did not specify specifics like the range, features, or charging times for this future EV. This happens after Ford took a $19.5 billion hit in December and ended production of its battery electric Ford F-150 Lightning, causing Paul to cry on the show. And it said its new EVs will be lighter, cheaper, more efficient, and made with lithium iron phosphate batteries with licensed tech from China's CATL. Paul.
So Ford says this new EV strategy is going to fall under the Universal EV Platform, or their UEV. You may have seen news about that come across a couple months ago. Time flies when you're having fun. It's going to debut under a mid-size truck, and then it may later support a sedan, crossover, three-row SUV, maybe even all the way up to small commercial vans. Under that UEV, Clark recruited talent from Formula One, Apple, Lucid, Rivian, Tesla, Automotive Power Group. That's a startup that Ford acquired in 2023. And that team adopted a bounty program that was focused on efficiency, setting targets for things like weight and aerodynamics, and rewarding design decisions that improve overall vehicle performance and cost. That team used thousands of 3D printed Lego-like prototype parts for rapid wind tunnel testing that's also early in development. Ford says the result will deliver about 15% more range, or about 50 miles more than a comparable gas-powered pickup, and should be 15% more aerodynamic than any other pickup on the market today. I'll believe it when I see it, Mike. And listen, if the idea was to get rid of the Lightning to transition to this one UEV platform where they could be more easily mass produced, then I guess I understand, but I guess I don't believe it either until it's actually rolling off the assembly line and that sticker says 30,000 MSRP. I guess I'll celebrate that day on the show. How about that? In the meantime, story 3.
You can take Paul Gerke out of Detroit, but you can't take Detroit out of Paul Gerke.
Brother, you watch the Pistons lately? I'm fired up. Cade Cunningham's the MVP.
All right, calm down there, pal. Our third story, Claire Brown from the New York Times. Boy, we're timesing out on the show lately. She writes, data centers and your power bill.
I was going to shout out Detroit basketball, but we are really about New York on the show today, aren't we? Tech companies investing billions into building data centers. As you know, as the time electricity is rising and the cost of it going up as well, those bills worrying politicians because voters like to punish the elected officials when bills spike, and hey, justifiably so, if they can do something about it. Now, there are some options on the table to lower electricity bills for consumers. One is making tech companies pay their way. We're seeing a lot of this right now, where data centers are forcing grid upgrades and sort of boosting electricity demand where they're setting up shop. And so now people are saying, hey, wait a minute, you're going to need to bring your own generation. We can't put this cost on the taxpayers. Companies like Anthropic pledging to cover grid upgrade costs, generate more power than needed, offsetting demand. That's going to help with the price effects. But actually delivering on all those promises is way more complicated than just saying them. I'm also going to give free lunch if you elect me school president. It's hard to pin specific grid upgrades on a single project. Nobody wants to foot the bill for any of this stuff. Rate cases are a thing for a reason. Utilities often build for data centers that sit in multiple interconnection queues for years. They might never get built. A White House fact sheet back in January urged PJM, the largest grid operator in the United States, to make data centers pay for new power on their behalf, even if they don't end up using it. PJM in particular is going to have to do that. That's where Data Center Alley is, and they're running out of capacity fast in that market, Mike.
Okay, so there are two other options to protect consumers from rising electricity prices. One, make data centers build their own power plants. So, as noted, several tech companies, Microsoft, Google, Meta, they already have plans to cover their own data centers with power, whether it be nuclear, natural gas, renewables. But even so, data centers need to be connected to the grid for backup power, unless you're doing batchable computing at your data centers. So the break glass option would be to ban data center construction altogether. Senator Bernie Sanders from Vermont, he's already endorsed a data center moratorium with new bills introduced by New York and Wisconsin legislators last week. Both would temporarily ban new data center construction. A pause like this might look preferable to lawmakers over rushed grid upgrades that could leave taxpayers footing the bill for projects that never get built. Without the clear rules on who pays, we could see more of these measures in the future, Paul.
Story number 4 this week, Lindsay Whitehurst over at AP News. It's titled, Supreme Court Strikes Down Trump's Sweeping Tariffs, Upending Central Plank of Economic Agenda. The writing on the wall has been there for a minute, Mike. Tell me about what's in this article.
Yeah, otherwise known as a BFD, the Supreme Court just struck down President Trump's sweeping global tariffs in a 6-3 decision. This decision centers on tariffs imposed under an emergency powers law. It includes the sweeping reciprocal tariffs he put on nearly every other country. So Chief Justice John Roberts says that according to the Constitution, tariffs are taxes and taxing power belongs to the Congress, not the president. Of course, 3 pro-fossil fuel conservative justices dissented, Alito, Thomas, and Kavanaugh, with Kavanaugh arguing that tariffs may be good or bad policy, but legally allowed. Hey, Brett, what happened to that originalist view of the Constitution there, bucko? The court did not settle what happens to the billions already collected. Companies like Costco are already suing in court, seeking refunds, and the dissent warns that the process could get messy. This does not necessarily end Trump's push for tariffs. The administration can try to reimpose duties under other trade laws, but that would come with more limits. Paul, your thoughts, friend?
Well, my thoughts at first are very childish, I'm sure. And someone way smarter than me is going to listen to this and be like, wow, Paul is way dumber than I thought. But I've just got to say out loud, does anyone really know where all this money is? Like, is there an imaginary honeypot of tariff cash that's just like lingering somewhere that we're able to dip into or maybe pay back or maybe not so much? I feel like there's no visibility at all into where a lot of this money went. And we know from covering the Cleantech sector that those tariffs were really driving up the cost of doing business.
Oh, yeah.
And under Biden, there were big investments in American factory to build Cleantech, and we still import a lot of crucial materials, wafer cells, lithium, steel, on down the line, that we need to build clean energy. And those tariffs are making it largely impossible to finish those investments and do things the right way. You know, you've got things penciled out to cost a certain amount, and then all of a sudden it's 40% more. Well, we're talking about tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars. That's a lot of money, Mike. It puts a lot of these things, it takes away their ability to pencil. We'll see if Trump tries to reimpose those tariffs through Congress. We'll be waiting and seeing. In the meantime, we got a guest on the horn.
Yeah, Arcelia Martin, first time from Inside Climate News. She has a great story. Retired EV batteries scored a new gig bolstering Texas's grid. Arcelia, welcome to the show. I love this story. I think it's so cool. If people haven't read it yet, which we want them to do, what is the big takeaway?
The big takeaway is there is this company, B2U Storage Solutions, that is taking these batteries from EVs once they've reached the end of their automotive life, around like 80% state of health, and then they're using them in grid applications to make, you know, what we see as kind of battery storage solutions that are becoming really popular in ERCOT, which there's very few people doing it. So that's kind of the main point there.
So I had an opportunity to lay eyes on one of these firsthand. I didn't even tell you about this, Mike. When I was out in San Diego for DTech a couple weeks ago, I had a chance to go by the University of California, San Diego's DER Connect lab, where they've got some of the state-of-the-art playground setups for this kind of thing. And they actually had a couple of these set up where you're talking big shipping containers with a couple old Tesla batteries in it, and they're trying to figure out what they can still get out of them. What other applications are there for this, Arcelia? Are there other companies that are exploring this idea? And how could it really stick in a way that makes a tangible difference for the grid?
Yeah, I mean, there's only a few companies that are doing this kind of beyond like a pilot project, kind of like what you were talking about. There's one company that used to Redwood, which kind of first entered as the recycler, and now they're shifting into this reuse application. And then there's another California company called Element Energy, I believe. And, you know, I think the scalability of it is something that analysts are kind of back and forth on. But then there's others that are like, well, as kind of more EV batteries cycle out of especially the US's automotive life, and there's kind of two options, right? Like after a EV battery has reached the end of its automotive life, it can either be sent immediately to recycling, or it can be exported to a market that is kind of emerging with EVs, where, you know, if people are driving 10 miles daily, that an older EV might totally work. This kind of application, this kind of second life grid application, hopes to kind of delay the recycling part of it. And the skepticism comes that like the math has to pencil of whether this thing can make money, and whether you can lower the repurposing costs. And B2U, the company that I wrote about, they're able to use these EV batteries exactly as they come from the car, which I think makes it possible for them, for it to be cost effective, is what they told me.
Arcelia, I have a question for you. In your reporting for this story, what are the companies saying about the performance of the batteries? You think, okay, if the battery has to stop its life in a car, how good is it? That's the question that I think a lot of people have in their mind. What did you hear in reporting this story?
That there's still years left of these batteries' abilities to perform in a different cycle, right? Like the needs of a battery to work in a car are much higher, right? Like you need to know that you're getting the distance but in this kind of stationary application, they're projecting, and they think it's conservative, but they're projecting that it's about like 6 to 8 years of life remaining in this application. And I was able to go to one of their sites just outside of San Antonio, and you can see, I mean, it's like an internal dashboard, but you can see all of the different batteries that are at the site as like little green tiles. And so you see that they're running correctly. And for example, when I was there was a red tile, and it was because like a fuse was popped. And so they're able to fix that, and then it shows green again. But another part that to me was a big question while I was reporting was like, okay, well, what happens when this battery reaches the end of life? You know, how do you go about fixing that? And you have to imagine that they're like these steel mesh containers, and then there's like little shelves. I mean, they're not little, but shelves for the EV batteries. And once one has kind of reached the end of its life in this application and it needs to be sent to recycling, they're able to, he told me, in about 15 minutes, replace it with a new EV battery. Mm-hmm.
Wow. All right. Paul, you want to do last question or go to Cleantech of the week?
You know, Arcelia, I think that I have a lot of questions. I want to know about the grid impacts more than anything else. I'm not the kind that could pencil this math together, but do we know anything about the ways in which like utilities could tap into this to potentially lower rates, and what the long-term applications might be?
I mean, I think in ERCOT specifically, batteries have played such a massive role, especially in the last 2 years. I mean, it's kind of bananas to think about that 5 years ago, there was basically no storage on ERCOT's grid, and now it's credited so often with all of these, whether it's a winter storm, whether it's summer weather in Texas, which, if y'all don't know, is quite hot. You know, that it's playing kind of an outsized role, and that it's become a massive part of our grid. And so, I mean, I think that I think it has legs. I think that's why it's interesting to me. And it also, from, you know, like a climate perspective, I think it's minimizing, or it's extending actually. It's extending the life of these mined materials in a way that benefits grid reliability, it seems. And I mean, I think we're pretty early stages. We'll see, you know, what we're talking about in 10 years. But one analyst I talked to was like, listen, this might seem like kind of a small project, a small contribution now, but maybe come 2040, you know, 15 or so years from now, this will be really important technology that they've already figured out.
Nice.
Well said, and I'm glad you shouted out Texas. It's amazing what you can do in a deregulated electricity market when you can kind of throw stuff at the wall. All right, time to wrap and get to our Clean Techer of the Week. Drum roll, Mr. Mendez, make you edit that in. Thank you very much. This week's Clean Techer of the Week is David Kirkpatrick. He's the managing director at SJF Ventures. David recently published a piece titled "Climate Tech is Not Endangered." You may have seen it on LinkedIn. That piece argues that even with the Trump administration rolling back federal climate policy, market and global momentum toward electrification and decarbonization will continue. So congrats, David, our Clean Techer of the Week. Thanks for boosting everyone's confidence with that thoughtful piece.
Yes, sir. We need that these days. All right, and thanks for our wonderful producer, Brian Mendez, and Claire Quirin and Alex Peterson for helping us gather these stories.
And Arcelia Martin for joining us on this episode of This Week in Clean Tech. If you enjoyed the show, took anything out of it, subscribe, leave a little feedback, or share your story suggestions to the email that we mentioned at the top of the show. You can read all the articles we discussed this week. Just click the links that are in the episode description and in the post on factorthis.com. Be good, people.